in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous and had his hands like this. Like, this was just, an average day for him. This is something that was like, this is not happening. But I had nowhere to hide.
For decades, Hollywood has been accused of following one unforgiving rule: stay quiet, play along, or risk being pushed aside. Now, one story involving Hayden Panettiere, Mel Gibson, and Rob Schneider is being framed online as something much bigger. Claims say Gibson uncovered information about what happened to Hayden, and that his alleged evidence could expose a much deeper Hollywood system. But here's the part people are questioning. Are these stories actually connected, or are separate controversies being combined into one dramatic narrative? According to the claims circulating online, Gibson's alleged information about Hayden's death could be the final piece of a puzzle Schneider has supposedly been warning people about for years. The allegations go even further, suggesting that the same powerful circles connected to Hayden were also involved in protecting other major Hollywood figures. But none of those broader connections have been established by the material provided. Before looking at Schneider's supposed reaction, it's important to understand Hayden's real story. She became a successful actress at a remarkably young age, appearing on television and building the kind of career many performers spend decades pursuing. She had fame, money, recognition, and seemingly unlimited potential. What fame couldn't guarantee was protection. Panettiere has also spoken publicly about difficult experiences during her career. Online narratives have added much more dramatic claims, including allegations about what happened to her as a teenager. But those specific allegations need to remain allegations unless reliable evidence confirms them.
He was on my team that I was working with. He came to me, and it was before this red carpet, and I had been doing Heroes, and we did press all the time. And I was a little low energy, and it was, here, take one of these. It's a happy pill, it'll give you energy. So I didn't think of it at the time as like a bad thing.
How old were you?
I was
16. Old enough to step into the industry, but still far too young to grasp the world she was being pulled into. Then came the pill. She took it, and suddenly she had more energy. She felt better. More importantly, she became easier to control. What seemed like a single decision would eventually trigger a devastating series of events that pushed her life toward the brink. And once that door was opened, getting it shut again would prove almost impossible.
Been something that was similar to like an Adderall, but they got it from Mexico. I should have thought that's so sketchy, but I didn't, because I trusted the person. And it did give me that little bit of energy, and I didn't feel like high and out of control, but I did feel like happy and like I was looking forward to doing
the life of the party.
Here's where the story takes a darker turn. She didn't feel high. She felt normal. She felt energized. And because she trusted the adult who gave it to her, she had no reason to question what she was taking. That was what made it so dangerous. In 2020, Hayden finally chose to speak publicly about what she said had happened. She released her memoir and, for the first time, shared her story in detail. It wasn't only about the pills, but everything that allegedly followed. The pills were just the beginning. According to Hayden, the abuse came later. She said that same trusted adult took her onto a yacht with several industry executives, and while they were out on the water, she was allegedly put inside a room with a naked man, described as a well-known industry executive, and left there alone.
Basically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous and had his hands like...
Think about what that means. She was only 16, trapped on a boat with nowhere to go, and surrounded by adults she trusted. She tried to escape. She screamed for help, and according to her account, nobody came.
Bolted, and I hid wherever I could think of to hide on a boat. There was no jumping off and swimming away, and there was nobody who was going to, I realized that there was nobody who was going to be empathetic to my situation, that this was nothing.
The most disturbing part may be what happened next. According to the account, she realized this wasn't something new. The implication was that the people on that boat had seen this before. It wasn't treated as unusual. It was presented as routine, normalized, and accepted by the people around her. She survived that night, but the trauma didn't simply disappear. Hayden spent years dealing with addiction, depression, and PTSD, which she has connected to painful experiences from a time when she should have been focused on being a teenager. And for years, she remained largely silent. Then came 2023, when Hayden shared more of her story through her memoir, describing those experiences in greater detail. After that, online discussions began connecting different pieces of the story that had previously been discussed separately. The adult who allegedly gave her pills, the executive connected to the yacht, and the parties surrounding powerful people in the entertainment world all became part of the conversation. Some began arguing that what happened to Hayden wasn't an isolated incident, but part of something much larger. That is where Jeffrey Epstein enters the narrative. Now, this is also where Mel Gibson becomes part of the story being circulated online. Gibson has publicly spoken about Epstein and allegations involving trafficking and powerful people in entertainment. While many celebrities avoided the subject, Gibson became one of the public figures associated with criticism of the system surrounding these allegations. But the claim that authorities ignored his warnings or deliberately buried an investigation remains unsubstantiated in the material provided. Gibson also became associated with the film Sound of Freedom, which was released in 2023 after years of difficulty finding a distributor. The movie focused on child trafficking, a subject that overlaps with the broader issues being discussed in connection with Hayden's story. From there, internet commentators began drawing even bigger connections involving Epstein's circle, suggesting it included not only alleged predators, but also people who may have enabled, protected, or benefited from a culture of silence.
I was in my mid-20s the first time I really came over here. You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand. Right. And I formed a bunch of opinions about the town. Surely that couldn't be, because, and then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? Mm-hmm. And then you find out later on the track that you were exactly on track. Mm-hmm. With a lot.
Mel may have sounded paranoid at first, but the allegations surrounding Hayden gave his warnings a bigger audience. As more claims surfaced, some people began wondering whether Mel had recognized something others ignored. Reports alleged that Hayden's former boyfriend, Steve Jones, was repeatedly seen with her on yachts. Then a 2022 blind item, published before the Epstein files became a controversy, claimed Steve was making Hayden a regular guest on Diddy's yacht. That timeline raised questions. Diddy, Epstein's circle, Hayden, and parties involving young women were suddenly being discussed within the same conversation about exploitation. What makes Mel's role more significant, according to the sources cited here, is the claim that he went beyond public commentary. Multiple sources alleged that Mel Gibson was cooperating with federal investigators, providing information and naming people while authorities examined Hayden's death. And Hayden is dead. She died at 36 after cardiac arrest. Official reports classified the death as natural causes. But people revisiting her history point to trauma, addiction, and alleged years of abuse, arguing that everything she endured took a devastating toll. That brings Rob Schneider into the picture. Why would a comedian become interested in exposing a network like this? Because Schneider had already spent years criticizing Hollywood and warning about what he believed happened to people who refused to conform. After reportedly learning what Mel Gibson had uncovered about Hayden, his supporters felt those warnings carried more weight. Then, about a year ago, Schneider made another bold move. He appeared on major platforms, discussed the people he believed were involved, and attacked the system itself. He named names, described Hollywood as capable of crushing dissent, and argued that anyone refusing to fall in line could face serious consequences.
I think they get particularly exercised by people who they thought were at least possibly on their side or gettable to their side.
Yeah.
You know, when you have Sean Hannity say half the stuff that I say, it's not controversial. But if I said it back then, at least, it had to be blown up because it was a betrayal, right? It was like a telegraphing of she's not with us.
It's more than that. It was a warning to others.
Yeah.
If you don't go with us and you don't toe the line, if you're going to be a troublemaker, we're going to come after you.
That warning wasn't merely theoretical. Rob says he experienced it himself. He claims he was blackballed, going from one of Hollywood's biggest comedians to someone increasingly pushed outside the industry because he refused to stay silent. So when allegations surrounding Mel Gibson's evidence about Hayden began circulating, Rob reportedly saw something larger than one individual case. To him, this wasn't simply about one woman. It was about a system he believed could pressure, exploit, and silence vulnerable people. And then came the question of who actually controls that system. Who has the influence to decide which celebrities get promoted, which voices receive platforms, and which people suddenly find themselves pushed aside? Rob began making his own accusations, and one of the most recognizable names he mentioned was Oprah. Oprah and Ellen have long-standing connections. Both became enormously successful television personalities, and both built powerful media brands. Rob has argued that major television personalities and entertainment figures can operate within the same broader culture, influencing what celebrities are encouraged to say and what they are discouraged from discussing. That brings Ellen back into the conversation surrounding Hayden. Ellen wasn't simply a television host with a daytime program. During her years at the top, she became one of the most influential personalities in entertainment. At the same time, allegations from former employees and workplace accounts portrayed a very different environment behind the scenes, including claims of a toxic workplace and harsh treatment of staff. Rob's argument goes even further. He has suggested that late-night hosts, talk show personalities, and other major media figures can collectively reinforce the same narratives. And according to that theory, when someone refuses to follow the expected script, the consequences can become severe. But how would a system this powerful actually keep people quiet? How could influential figures pressure someone who already has fame, money, and an audience? Rob's answer is that intimidation doesn't always require a literal threat. Sometimes the pressure is much simpler. Cooperate, or risk losing everything. Follow the accepted narrative, or watch opportunities disappear. For Ellen, that system appeared to work, at least according to Rob's interpretation. She reached the highest levels of television, built an enormous brand, and became known publicly for a friendly, positive image. But critics and former employees have argued that the private reality was very different. And that's where the larger controversy begins, whether the public image people saw on television matched what was allegedly happening behind closed doors.
Phony, hypocrite, liar. That's what she is.
For 17 years, Ellen ran her show like a dictator, according to the allegations and accounts being discussed. Staffers were reportedly expected to follow strict rules around interacting with her, and if you didn't pitch jokes that fit her preferred style, the reaction could be harsh. Former employees also allege that once someone began gaining recognition or becoming a potential threat, Ellen's attitude toward them could change dramatically. Yet none of those accusations seemed to threaten her position for years, because Ellen had powerful protection behind her. She had the network, the platform, and influential people willing to stand by her. That all changed when one person finally decided to break ranks.
Money, or you broke up with her because...
I broke up with her because her goal was to have a lot of money, and mine was to find love, and hers was I want 60 billion. Good luck. Our forks are never going to meet. The further we stay on with this, the further we will be apart.
She didn't live in that loving kind.
Anne Heche was one of the few people who reportedly knew Ellen away from the cameras, and the accounts attributed to Heche paint a very different picture of the television star's private ambitions. According to those claims, Ellen was allegedly driven less by love, happiness, or personal meaning, and more by power, money, and control. The allegations go further, suggesting she would do whatever was necessary to maintain that position. Then, the timeline became a major point of discussion. In May 2022, Ellen announced that she was leaving her long-running show and stepping back from Hollywood, saying the culture had become too toxic. Just a few months later, on August 5, 2022, Anne Heche was involved in a devastating car crash in Los Angeles. She was 53 years old and remained hospitalized for 9 days before dying from her injuries. The official account described the incident as an accident, with reports stating that Heche had been driving under the influence and lost control of her vehicle. But speculation quickly followed online, with people questioning different aspects of the crash and analyzing available footage for anything they believed looked unusual. Those theories remain unproven, and the official findings do not establish that Haish was targeted. What added fuel to the speculation was the claim that Haish had recently worked on a film involving the same kind of criminal subject matter being discussed in the Haish story. From there, online commentators began connecting the deaths, Hollywood figures, and alleged networks together. The broader theory being promoted by Rob Schneider and others is that Ellen was not acting alone, but was allegedly part of a much larger network involving powerful people across entertainment, media, and politics. Supporters of that theory argue that such a network could influence which stories receive attention, which celebrities receive platforms, and which controversies disappear from public view. They also claim that people who challenge influential figures can face professional consequences, while insiders are protected. Schneider has publicly criticized a number of high-profile celebrities, including Oprah, Ellen, and Will Smith, presenting them as examples of what he believes is a larger system. His critics, however, dispute those conclusions, and there is no established evidence proving the existence of the coordinated network described in these allegations. Still, Schneider's argument centers on a question he repeatedly raises. Why do some celebrities appear to survive major controversies, while others seem to lose their careers after speaking out? Will Smith's 2022 Oscars incident is often brought into that debate. Smith walked on stage and slapped Chris Rock during the live broadcast after Rock made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith. Smith faced consequences, including a 10-year ban from Academy events, although he continued working in Hollywood. Schneider's supporters compare that outcome with the careers of people who have publicly challenged powerful industry figures. Monique is another name frequently mentioned in this context because of her long-running dispute with Oprah and other entertainment executives. Her career continued, but she has spoken extensively about professional conflicts and what she viewed as unfair treatment. These examples are used by critics of Hollywood's power structure to argue that influence can affect who receives opportunities and who does not, even though they do not by themselves prove a secret coordinated organization. The Hayden allegations take the theory even further. Claims circulating online have attempted to connect Hayden to Epstein's world, Diddy's parties, and her former boyfriend Steve Jones. Some reports have alleged that Jones was close to Diddy and even helped save him from drowning during an incident involving one of his boats, with Hayden allegedly present. Those claims need to be distinguished from established facts. Diddy, whose legal name is Sean Combs, was convicted in 2025 on 2 federal prostitution-related counts, but acquitted of the more serious federal charges of racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking. The case also involved extensive allegations of abuse, and separate video footage of Combs assaulting Cassie Ventura became public. But the unresolved question raised by commentators is how a powerful figure could face years of allegations before federal prosecution ultimately occurred. That question is where Schneider's broader argument returns. He and other commentators have alleged that influential people helped protect powerful figures, silence critics, and keep damaging information from becoming public. But the claim that one coordinated network protected Ellen, Diddy, or anyone else remains an allegation rather than an established fact. The same caution applies to the claim that Hayden was deliberately silenced or that her death was connected to a larger criminal operation. Those conclusions have not been established by the information presented here. What is undeniable is that the story has become a collision between celebrity power, serious allegations, public distrust, and competing narratives about what happens behind Hollywood's most carefully managed images. Mel Gibson has been portrayed by supporters of the theory as someone attempting to uncover information, while Rob Schneider has increasingly positioned himself as a public critic of the entertainment establishment. Hayden's story, meanwhile, continues to generate questions about the treatment of vulnerable people in celebrity culture. The biggest question is no longer simply who is being accused, it is which claims can actually be proven, which evidence will survive scrutiny, and whether any powerful person implicated in wrongdoing can ultimately be held accountable.